Thank you for being interested in our videos, and hope that you can contact us. And we're the Cyber Church of Christ, and we usually study topics, but any topic that you have of concern, we'll be happy to study, see what the Bible, we don't have an opinion. We just go by what the Bible says, because we have a commandment to prove all things. You have to prove it with scriptures. But today's topic, we're going to look at the cross, and not the cross of Jesus, but our cross. So whoever heard of our cross? So exactly what is our cross? Okay, so let's start off with Luke 14:27, because this could be a brand new topic for some folks. And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Okay, what do you mean his cross? Who doth bear his cross? So his cross, if I ask somebody who is his cross, they're going to say Jesus' cross. And immediately think of a physical cross, piece wood shaped like a plus sign. So and whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me. Okay, let's look at more detail. So there is such a thing as we have our own cross. We just read it. All right, let's look at Matthew 16:24 on the topic. Then Jesus said unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Okay. Well, what is this? What do you mean by disciples? Well, look that up in the Greek. It says here, a disciple is a student or a committed follower. So I'd be a student of the Bible. Well, yeah, it's a written word. You have a living word and a written word. Okay, so when people run into me and ask something, I'll say, yeah, I'm a Bible student first, before being a Bible teacher. And the Bible teacher is actually more like a guide, because the Bible teacher didn't write the Bible. So yes, I would be what's called a permanent student. And so if you're going to be a disciple of Christ, you have to be a student, according to the Greek definition here. So Jesus said unto the disciples, you've tied somehow disciples with cross. Okay, let's look at that. That's pretty interesting. All right, let's look at this note we got here. Your cross is spiritual. Okay. Well, that's why I don't have two pieces of wood and I'm dragging that around everywhere I go, although I have seen that on streets. Your cross is spiritual. The meaning of his cross is determined by the phrase following the conjunction and. Okay, so I have what? I had his cross and then the word and. Oh, and then I had, if you want to be a disciple, and then I have an and. Lots of ands in the Bible. If you're studying with us, you'll find there'll be the word but and if that constantly show up. Okay, so there's always an and, because one time he'll have a commandment and he'll say, oh, and he'll add to the commandment or even yet another commandment with it. And they're all simple, just you need to follow what the and says. All right, so your cross is spiritual, meaning the meaning of his cross is determined by the phrase following the conjunction and. Your cross is your spiritual life, which has to be lived as a disciple of Christ, that will be judged. Okay, so somehow, okay, you're doing cross and disciple. Disciples cross. What does the cross have to do with disciples? Well, that's in the note here. It's spiritual. I know I see people, though, they have a cross, they'll wear a cross, have it on a ring or a necklace or a bracelet or something. Yeah, those are physical crosses. Okay, well, how is that of spiritual? Well, it's not. What they've done is taken, said, hey, you need to bear your cross. You go, okay, well, I got one right here. Well, no, that's a physical cross. That's always been amazing to me is that Jesus lives his whole life, gets tortured and all, and dies the worst death possible, and then people talk about the cross, not really about his life. So uh, if you're a student, a disciple, then you would want to know what the cross means as opposed to being something physical. All right. So now let's dive in a little deeper since we know our cross is actually spiritual and not a physical cross. So yeah, I could wear a physical cross if I wanted, but that's not biblical. Oh, if the Bible told me I have to wear a cross, then you'd see it all day. Jesus, you might find this interesting here if you hadn't thought about it. Jesus, before dying on the cross, commanded the rich believer to take up the cross. Okay, well, how are you going to take up Jesus hadn't even died? We don't even know about a cross and Jesus dying on the cross until we get to the end of his preaching there at the end, when he gets uh, crucified on that weekend. Oh, he got crucified and then 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth. But he gets crucified. That first time we hear about a cross is when they're leading him to his death. He can't even, and it's a big physical cross. He can't even carry it. Simon of Cyrene had just come out of the country, so I'm assuming he's like a weightlifter guy, someone that's strong. And they told him, "Hey, come carry this cross for him." He just came right out of nowhere. So it's not anybody in the crowd are going to carry the cross. Got some guy that just showed up. Yeah, that's how it works. God has things all set up and pre-planned, and then all we do is watch the execution of that plan. All right, so Jesus is talking. Let's look at this. Mark 10:21 and 22. Mark 10:21. Then Jesus, beholding him, loved him and said unto him, man, what's with the pronouns? Oh, well, that's what we do. You'll notice most of our lessons that we have here on YouTube will bring up the fact as pronoun because the Bible's pronoun heavy. And so we'll mention pronouns over and over again because you got to go find out what the noun is. Even today, if someone has a pronoun or a nickname or something, well, they have a real name instead. The Jesus beholding him. So this is a rich young ruler. When he approached Jesus, said, "Hey, I've done everything gets me into heaven. I did A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, so I'm in." And then Jesus looks at him. That's what this beholding is. Jesus looks at him and then says he loves him. And now he has something to say. One thing that thou lackest, go thy way, sell whatsoever thou hast, give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come, take up the cross and follow me. Well, take up the cross. Jesus is still walking on, but we don't have the cross until Jesus dies. Well, right here we got proof. This take up the cross is spiritual. Oh, how are you going to tell the rich young ruler that, hey, take up the cross? You go, what cross? Yeah, I mean, Jesus hadn't died on the cross yet. So we have take up the cross before Jesus has even died? Yeah, that's what we're looking at. Okay, and follow me. So we got some more ands in here, huh? We said and okay, and it's like all these ands, because he's teaching to it. There's more to it, so you get there's more detail after every and. That's the point I'm making. All right, so you only lack one thing. I'm not disagreeing that you've done all these things for our Father and wanting to get into heaven, but he says, "Go thy way," which means go back to your regular life that you have. Okay, so there's the first command I'm giving you. Second command I'm giving you is sell. Sell what? Everything. You want to sell everything whatsoever. Okay. Whatsoever you have, give to the poor. There's another commandment. And thou shalt have treasure in heaven. And come take up the cross. There's your final commandment. And follow me. Oh, there's the follow. There's another commandment. So you're going to take up the cross and follow me. And so that's the only thing you haven't done yet. So the rich young ruler, first question would be, what is the cross? What do you mean by taking up the cross? Because that'd be a new phrase. I mean, what cross? The Jews don't kill people with hanging on a cross. Okay, come take up the cross. All right, let's see what his response is. Mark 10:22. And he was sad at that saying. Okay, so this he goes with this him up here. Okay, why are you sad? Do you know what just got through happening? It says you're going to have treasure in heaven. You should have treasure in heaven. How is that sad? I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Tell me I got treasure in heaven? Well, that's going to top everything. Okay, so this should be overwhelming joy. I'm going to have treasure in heaven. Okay, I guess that's what he'll concentrate on, huh? No, no, he was sad at that saying and went away grieved, for he had great possessions. Because he already has his treasure. He has treasure now. You're talking about treasure in heaven. Well, I don't get to see that. That'd be after I died and got judged and all. So I got to pick between the treasure I got now and the treasure that's promised. I don't know, man. I sure like the treasure I got now. I already have treasure. Okay, so you're sad about what part here? The treasure in heaven. I'm sure you're not sad about that. Uh, oh, I know. The key word here is going to be sell. Oh, they won't sell everything. So you're giving up all this treasure on earth? Yeah. And what are you going to do with all that money? I told you what to do. You can give it to the poor. Okay, so I don't have a problem recognizing the poor. No, none of us do. Oh, so I'm sad because you told me to sell everything. I won't, even today, I'll see people, you know what they want? They want this treasure in heaven. But they don't want all these commandments that go with the treasure in heaven. They don't want to, hey, I want the treasure in heaven deal. Yeah, well, look at all this ands you got in here. Go do this, go do that. Same as we have, same as us. If you want treasure in heaven, then what about your treasures on earth? So he already has his treasure. Okay, you got to pick treasure here on earth. Why does that mean I'm not getting, why can't I have my treasure here and my treasure in heaven? That sounds like a deal. Because that's not possible. I told you you got to get rid of your treasure on earth to have the treasure in heaven. All right, well, that makes me sad. Okay, why? Because I'm rich. That's why. I got great. You're talking about getting rid of everything I lived my whole life for to possess, and now you're saying, hey, get rid of that. Go give it to people that ain't got nothing. And then take up the cross. What is it? Take up the cross. Huh. So now I'm finding out while doing this lesson, this take up the cross means become a disciple and stay a disciple. Oh, and you said what disciple was what now? Student, a committed follower. Okay. So somehow we tied up, take up the cross with being a disciple. Correct. Being a disciple is taking up the cross. All right. Now, let's see what we preach here. We preach, when I say we, I'm talking about the church, specifically the congregation, Cyber Church of Christ. We bearing the cross and becoming and remaining a disciple. That's what we're preaching. To bear the cross, and then you become and remain a disciple. 1 Corinthians 1:18, just to point this out. For the preaching of the cross, okay, that's where you got preaching of the cross. The preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, But unto us which are saved, it is the power of God. Okay. So who are the saved here? Well, I'm talking about the disciples. You know, people claim they're already saved. Well, this to be saved. This assumes you're going to be a disciple until death. Yeah. So that's who we are. And what does it come with? Well, it comes with the power of God, according to this here. Power of God. Oh, and so preaching of the cross. So your preacher guy is going to preach about the cross. So it's just like Jesus died, there's two pieces of wood and the nail went through the palm and then right up there at the feet and nailed to the cross. No, that's not what we're preaching. That's how Jesus died, if you want to know that. Did you know that the blood poured on the planet is the true blessing? Not the fact that he's on the cross. Yeah, that he died a terrible death, no doubt about that. But the preaching of the cross is becoming a disciple, dedicating your life to our Father, which is what Jesus did for us. So no, that's what we do. When we're preaching the truth, we're actually preaching of the cross. Because why? Because we're disciples and we're wanting you to be, if you're watching this and you're not in the kingdom, we're wanting you to become a disciple. Because why? Well, the Bible wants you to become a disciple. It's not like we have a personal opinion, but you want to be saved? Well, the power is in the preaching of the cross. And, you know, when I talk about going to heaven and preaching of the cross, do you know what my high IQ'd, intelligent friends think? Well, the Bible tells you what they think. They think it's foolish. Yeah, the foolishness of preaching to save men. Yes, that's a whole different topic. So yeah, the word you talk about preaching of the cross. The fellow man's going to consider it foolishness. Okay, do we know someone who considers it foolishness what the outcome is? Well, yeah, they perish. Oh, and what do you got? Another pronoun there? Yeah, I got another pronoun here. Okay, so us and them. Well, I know all about us and them. Okay, well, who is the us? The ones are preaching of the cross. And who are the them? The one that are perished, they call it foolishness and they perish. Okay, well, that kind of simplifies things. All right, there are enemies of the cross. Well, the guy said he told me it was foolish. He has a high IQ, says what I'm doing is dumb. So his foolishness there is what? Hmm. So that's not an enemy. That's just someone saying you believe stuff, you know. Well, no, there's actual enemies of the cross. All right, let's look at that. We're going to look at Philippians 3, verses 18 and 19. That's how we'll finish today's lesson on the cross. There are enemies of the cross. I got to hear this. And this is all one prepositional phrase, by the way. Philippians 3, 18 and 19. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are the enemies of the cross of Christ. Huh. Well, this actually is plural. Well, yeah, it's plural. So I have more than one enemy of the cross. Yeah, you can look all through the Bible and you can see they're enemies of the cross. Well, so they're my personal enemy. No, you're supposed to love your enemies. You're talking about physically here on planet Earth? No, they're the enemies of the cross, not your personal enemy. Aren't you like a disciple of Christ? Yeah, turn the other cheek guy. Yeah, okay. Well, your enemies you're supposed to love. You recognize and say, okay, well, they're the enemy. Well, here we're talking about enemies of the cross, not the people. Well, that would mean like they're enemies of the doctrine. Well, yeah, the doctrine is the cross of Christ. That's becoming a disciple. That's walking hey, this covers everything. This is walking the narrow path, how to get into heaven until the end, which is another commandment. Hey, you're supposed to be a disciple until the end. Okay. So we have enemies of the cross, and what that really means is what? Enemies of the doctrine. Yeah. And I've had many in my life tell me that the doctrine that I believe is foolishness. Okay? Now, whose end is destruction? So the enemy's destroyed? Well, yeah, at the end. Okay, well, what about now? No, well, now you have, and it's sad because I'm telling you, even weeping here, that this enemies of the cross, that's current. Enemies of the cross of Christ. Okay, so they're enemies against a piece of wood? No, you're going back to the physical. This is spiritual. They're enemies of the cross of Christ. So they're not believing in the sacrifice. Father sacrificed his son for us to prove his plan. And we had communion today. We were remembering the life of Christ and the blood he poured forth on the planet. I use that every day. Yeah, I can get forgiveness of sin. Then I'm going to use it at the judgment day. So this blood of Christ is top notch for me. Yeah. Okay, so there's enemies of the cross of Christ. So they're not my enemy. Well, no, are you the Bible? No. Are you the Christ? No. Well, these are enemies of the cross of Christ. So don't get that confused with, oh, they hate the Bible, so they're my enemy. No, they're enemies of the Bible. They're enemies of the Christ. You're supposed to love your enemy because what if they want to become a disciple someday? They want to save my life and see that I'm living as a disciple. Maybe I'm an example. And they're no longer an enemy, but they're a friend of the cross of Christ, becoming a disciple. Isn't the anonym of enemy a friend? Yeah. Okay, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly. Oh, God is their belly. Well, let me look back up here. What was I doing here? He said that he was sad because he had great possessions. Well, let me look at this again. So 319 says, whoa, with the belly, I got you. So that's the physical things because I'm really wanting a mansion and a Rolls Royce. Yeah. Well, that's your God. Okay, well, this says belly. Yeah, it's using belly as a metaphor for your life. And what is your life? Is it wanting to be physical and get rich? That's what the rich young ruler had. He had all kinds of money. Okay, well, the idea of getting after all that work and me getting all this fame and rich, now you're telling me, go sell all that and do what? Take up the cross, whatever that is. Well, I'm just sad at the part where you told me to sell everything I got. I didn't pay attention. You mean the real question would have been, okay, what is take up the cross? That's what you should have asked Christ. Just said, okay, what is take up the cross? Well, no, you're sad because you didn't hear the take up the cross part. You heard the sell, give it all away. That's the part you heard. Oh, okay. So whose glory is their shame? Is they're glorying in their great possessions. Why? Because they mind earthly things. Okay, so becoming a disciple and doing what? Bearing the cross. That's what we have a cross. We're bearing our cross. That means we're living with the cross. And you know what? His laws aren't grievous. That's another thing about these people that think it's foolishness. It's simple. Their life is complicated. Our life is much simpler. I already know what's happening on planet Earth, how it all got here, what's expected of man in the hereafter. Oh, yeah. That's simple for us because we have knowledge. But those that mind earthly things, you know what they think about the bearing the cross? Yeah, I do. It's called foolishness. We already found that out. So the world thinks that's foolishness, you bearing the cross and becoming a disciple. Correct. Bible says that. I don't have to even say that. I already know it's in there. Okay. Huh. So foolishness leads to what? Well, it's going to be destruction. You never did take up the cross, did you? You do know taking up the cross is going to be calling on the name of the Lord and getting into the kingdom. Yeah, then you're going to be a disciple. And then once you're a disciple, you remain a disciple until when? Until the end. This actually goes with every sermon. Huh? Yeah, this taking up the cross, it actually our cross, it actually is every commandment we have is taking up the cross. Oh, no, this is an umbrella thing. Look at all it has underneath it. You're going to, and you know what? We're going to preach that. We are? Yeah, we're preaching of the cross. That's what Cyber Church of Christ does. And it has to do with you carrying the cross because it's what? Spiritual. So anyway, I hope you got something out of today's lesson. We each have a cross to bear, and it's spiritual, and we always have it. And you know what? It's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. I'm not sad because you told me I have to bear my own cross. No, no, I wouldn't be sad to sell everything I have, give to the poor if I was totally commanded to do that. Right. Find it too simple. But you can see here where the world, they're dealing with foolishness. The world said, no, you're doing, what are you doing? Some Bible thing there? No, I don't believe any of that. Okay, you won't. You know when you are going to believe it? On this end. Oh, yeah, when you're leaving the faith world and entering the fact world, which is called the judgment day. And what is, if they did not take up the cross, what about these enemies of the cross? Destruction. Oh, yeah, and that's why. So look at all these pronouns, huh? We always got these pronouns. So that's what you do when you study with us. We'll study, hey, what is the noun for that pronoun? What is this verse saying? We look and study these words. We don't read the Bible. If you just read the Bible, you'd just be reading through these verses. You're not going to be stopping and thinking about, hey, what is the cross? What does that mean? How does that affect me? So that's what we do. We're Cyber Church of Christ. Hope you learned something today's lesson. It's our desire that you want to take up the cross and lead a life of a disciple. With Cyber Church of Christ, we'd love to hear from you.